And we want to welcome you again to Power Charge Your PowerPoint with ZoomText. Thank you for joining us today. We have one presenter with us, and that is Ben Knolles. He's done ZoomText presentations for us in the past. He's an assistive technology engineer for TPGi, that is a Vispero company. We have several learning objectives we want to talk about. We're going to learn 6 ZoomText keystrokes to use while operating PowerPoint. We'll learn which ZoomText dual monitor configuration to use when presenting a PowerPoint. That's very important to know how best to view that PowerPoint with ZoomText. We'll learn what ZoomText app reader tool will read in PowerPoint Windows. So you want to know how best to handle speech with PowerPoint. We'll help you understand that here in just a bit. Some challenges for today. While you're sharing a PowerPoint, you may have had difficulty adjusting magnification levels while presenting. That can be very difficult if you have to go through the interface and try and do that. We're going to show you a technique to do that a lot more easily today. You don't want your magnification level shared with others during a presentation. Just because you need yours at a certain level of magnification, you don't want to share that with everybody else that's having to read it who may not need it. It can be difficult to know which reader features can be used with PowerPoint. We'll help you understand that today. And to get that started, let's turn it over to Ben.
All right, thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. As Paul said, I'm Ben Knolles with TPGi. I've been with TPGi for almost 3 years now. Prior to that, I was an assistive technology, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat there. Assistive technology specialist with a nonprofit here in Oklahoma. I live just south of Oklahoma City. So I've worked quite a bit with ZoomText and JAWS in the past. In my new position, or my position with Vispero TPGi, I primarily work with JAWS scripting, but I still do ZoomText training in Fusion as well. So I'm going to present my screen real quick, Betsy. So as Paul mentioned, the first thing we're going to talk about today are some helpful ZoomText keystrokes, as well as some PowerPoint keystrokes. But the reason I wanted to chat about these keystrokes is because, as Paul mentioned, if we're in a slideshow and we only have one monitor, if we need to change our Zoom settings and we don't know keystrokes, we may get a bit confused because my taskbar is not down here where I can click on the ZoomText interface. I can alt tab to the interface. And that's okay if you want to do that. There's nothing wrong with that, but it may be distracting to you as the presenter. If you're presenting, you may want to keep focused on what you're doing rather than switching to the interface, clicking on the feature you want to the setting you want to change, and then going back to the PowerPoint presentation. So a couple basics we want to know are how to zoom in, zoom out with the keyboard. So that is going to be caps lock up arrow.
Voice enable.
I'm going to turn my speech on just so you can hear some feedback. If you can't hear my speech, just let me know. I believe you should be able to. So caps lock up arrow
1.4.
we can hear it magnified to 1.4. Caps lock down arrow is going to
1.2.
decrease magnification. We can also use the mouse wheel. I can hold shift caps lock and scroll
1.4.
scrolling the mouse wheel up or down.
1. 2.25.
So that's using cap, shift, and the mouse wheel. So
1.
Increasing, decreasing magnification, probably one that's going to be used most often. Another one is toggling speech. Let's say you're in person you're presenting in person, we're going to talk about that a lot today. And you've got, you had speech on and you're plugged into the system doing your presentation, and you start and you realize, oh, ZoomText is talking. How do I quickly turn speech off? And you can do that with Alt Caps Enter.
Voice disabled.
That'll disable voice. Alt Caps Enter will turn it back on.
Voice enabled. Voice disabled.
You don't have to worry about that with doing a Zoom presentation unless you check the share sound checkbox when you share via Zoom, or you can also share sound in Teams. If you don't check that checkbox, your audience isn't going to hear your computer sound. So that's really a setting that you're going to use when you're presenting in person. Now, one other thing I'd like to point out, another keystroke. You may have seen it on my screen when I first shared my screen, is this quick access toolbar. We've talked about this in a couple previous presentations. This was an addition to one of the updates in ZoomText in Fusion 2021. When you first start ZoomText, the default, it'll be over here on the right side of the screen. You can close that with, I'm going to click on the little X up here to close it so it's no longer on the screen. But if you say you're not keen on using keystrokes, you can, if you don't, you can get rid of the quick access toolbar by closing out of it up there. But if you want to quickly access it, you can hold caps lock and right click anywhere on the screen, and you can quickly change your setting. I just increased magnification, and then I can close that. And now it's gone. So again, caps lock, right click, I can turn speech on. We've done some previous presentations where you can get into the kind of the nuts and bolts of this quick access bar. Now, if I don't click the X here to close this, and if I just click back on the presentation, if I go over here to the right, it's still going to be here. So that's something, if you don't want that to be displayed, because if we're magnified, we may miss, if I'm magnified here, like I can't see that that's displayed on my screen. So I may forget it's there. Just real quick, what we can do, if you always want this to be hidden when you're not using it, you can, at the very bottom of the access bar, you can click the expand button and then go into customize, go to preferences, and change this setting at the top to automatically hide. When leaving the quick access bar, it will automatically hide. And if you say okay and okay, and then close out of that. Now, if I zoom out so you can see the whole thing. Now, when I use that, if I bring it up and just click out of it, I can click out of it, or I can click the X. Either way, it's not going to be on the screen for my audience to view. So where can we find these shortcuts if we're wondering where they are? You can always go to the ZoomText interface. Zoom that in just a little bit. And you can always just hover over the icon of what you want to know the keystroke for. So if I put my pointer on the increase magnification button, a little pop-up window is displayed, and it tells me I can zoom in with caps lock up, I can zoom out with caps lock down. So you can always hover over the feature that you want to know the keystroke for. You can also go to the ZoomText menu and go down to command keys, and you can find your list of all your command keys. They have the layered key and the hotkey. We're talking primarily about the hotkeys today, but you can do a search for, pointer, and it'll show you how to turn your pointer enhancement off. Caps lock plus P. I press that, and my pointer enhancement is now just disabled. I press it again, it toggles it back on. A layered keystroke, just to point out real quick, is if we do caps lock space, and then the keystrokes that are listed here, M and then P, and that means magnification and then pointer. So if I do caps lock space, I'm in this command mode selection and I press M and P, and that turns my pointer off. So you can also use these layered keystrokes if you like. I just press escape to close that little window up there. So your ZoomText command keys is where you can find, under the ZoomText menu is where you can find all those keystrokes. Also, if you're not crazy about having the caps lock keys, your ZoomText key, this is also where you can change that. Couple PowerPoint keystrokes that come in handy. Most of us learn, if we do know one keystroke in PowerPoint, it's F5 to start the slideshow. Escape will get you out of it. One thing I do want to point out that comes in handy is, say you're a few slides into your presentation and you get a question and want to go back, and you get out of the slide, you go back to where you were. Anyways, say you want to start your slideshow from a slide you have selected here. If we press F5, it's just going to start at the beginning. But if we press Shift F5, it'll start from the selected slide. So F5 and Shift F5. F5 starts from the top. And then just a couple more. Spacebar will advance you forward. Backspace will move you backwards. You can also use your left and right arrow keys to toggle or to switch between slides. One note though is if you're using Fusion, that won't work because left and right arrow or those are actually say next character and say previous character. So I usually just stick with spacebar and backspace. One other keystroke that I do like that some people may not be aware of. If I zoom this in some, if the screen is jumping around a little too much for them and they want to slowly scroll a little bit smoother, you can do that with, if you hold your shift caps lock key down and hit your down arrow, it'll start scrolling down slowly. If I do shift caps lock right, it'll start going right, and so on. Shift caps up. And if I press the key, so if I press the arrow key a couple times, shift caps right, it'll start going faster. And to stop scrolling, I just release the shift and the caps lock key. All right. So zoom in, zoom out, enable speech, access to QAB. So those are the primary ones. Caps lock up arrow to zoom in, control plus scroll mouse wheel up. Oh, that's wrong. We need to fix that. Let's shift caps, scroll mouse wheel up. Sorry about that. So we'll get that fixed before we publish that. Alt caps lock enter to disable or enable speech, and then access to QAB with caps lock, right click. All right. I will stop sharing and let Betsy take it back for a minute.
All right, so we're on our first poll question.
All right, so let's start with that. This is regarding one of the keystrokes we just talked about. So we want to know, what is the keystroke to enable and disable speech? Your choices are caps lock plus enter, alt plus enter, alt plus caps lock plus enter, and control plus caps lock plus enter. And I think we had some questions about some of these keystrokes. All those beginning ones are ZoomText keystrokes, right, Ben? Not PowerPoint. These are all ZoomText keystrokes.
Yeah, the only PowerPoint keystrokes were F5, Shift F5. Those are the PowerPoint keystrokes. The rest, all the ones on the slides are going to be specific to ZoomText and Fusion.
Great. Well, if you have any other questions, this is a great moment to drop those in the chat. So Donna has asked, where is ZoomText?
So Donna, can you clarify? So ZoomText, where is it running on the screen? Like, where's the interface when I have the PowerPoint? Yeah, let me, I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick again, if that's
Great.
okay.
I will stop sharing.
All right. Okay, so when I am in the presentation, ZoomText it's running, but we can't see it because the slide takes up the whole screen. And in a minute, we're going to look at the presenter view, which will look a little bit different. But ZoomText if I press Alt Tab, I can get to the interface. It's right there. And so there's the interface. You can bring it to the foreground by either Alt Tabbing or pressing Control Caps Lock U. That will bring the interface up. But during the presentation, yeah, you may not see the interface because that slideshow is taking up the full screen. Let me just check something. And the presenter view does the same thing. This is presenter view, which we'll look at more in a minute, but you don't see the taskbar by default. So you don't see the start menu or anything like that. If I press the Windows key, it'll pop up and then I can see that ZoomText is down there. But when I click back in PowerPoint, kind of disappears because it's running in full screen mode. Does that answer your question, Donna?
So Donna asked, is that the taskbar for the PowerPoint?
This right here that's on the screen now?
Yes.
No, this is just the standard Windows taskbar. So if I go to the desktop, if I get out of this, get out of my presentation, this is the same thing that's showing up. So if I just go to PowerPoint, I'm in my just edit view, I'm going through editing my PowerPoint, I can still see that the taskbar down here. The minute I go into presentation mode, it'll go away. It's still there, and we can get there with that command. I believe there's one of these things will let you see. No, that's not it. Well, screen, show taskbar. So if you click on this little, if you're in a slideshow and you click the little dot button down here and go to screen and say show taskbar, it'll display the taskbar so you can see it. When I click back in the PowerPoint, it actually goes away. So, I mean, the quickest way, if you want to see it, is just hit your Windows key on your keyboard and it'll pop up there and you can get to what you need.
All right, well, that was it for the questions that came into the chat. So let's look at our poll question. What is the keystroke to enable and disable speech? I think we might have stumped some of you on this one. Most popular response at 59% was Alt plus caps lock plus enter. 23% said Control plus caps lock plus enter. 14% chose caps lock plus enter, and only 5% chose Alt plus enter. So Ben, what was the correct response?
It is Alt caps enter. It's
right.
One way to remember. So alt caps and then another keystroke. Usually it's your it's going to be one of your sound settings. So Alt caps M is mouse echo. Alt caps K is keyboard. Alt caps enter is going to toggle that voice on and off.
All right. Thank you, Ben. And thank you guys for taking that poll question.
All right. Okay. So we need to toggle a setting here on my screen might flash a couple times here. I'm turning on this dual monitor setting. All right, let me check something. All right. Okay, so so we're going to be talking about presenting. We're really going to focus on presenting a PowerPoint with multiple monitors. We wanted to talk about this because with, we're starting to get back into actual in-person meetings and things like that with COVID the way it is right now. So we thought it would be a good time to talk about when you're presenting a PowerPoint, like how does that work when you're using ZoomText, or what are some tips that you can use? So the first tip is, especially if you're used to using a single monitor setup, it can be a shock when you go to a location and have a second monitor plugged in, because your computer will behave a little bit differently. But the first tip I want to give you, if you're going to start doing that, if you haven't done it before, is on your laptop, make sure you know what type of output your laptop has. Is it HDMI? Is it DisplayPort? The reason that's important is because you want to know what kind of cord the venue, what kind of cord the venue has. So you want to ask the venue, what kind of cords do you have available? I'm bringing my own laptop. If it's a a large like hotel or event place, they're going to have all kinds of connections and you probably won't have a problem. But if you're doing a smaller presentation, maybe like a local library, they may only have like one type of cord. Maybe they only have an HDMI going to their projector, and maybe you don't have an HDMI port on your computer. So one thing is just know what your output is on your laptop, and if you need help, again, ask IT and just chat with the folks at the venue to make sure you're all good to go. That way there's no surprises when you get there. So the first thing, when you plug your computer in on, what's going on with my screen here? Speaking of technical, Betsy, can you tell me, do you see is my screen fully magnified here? Or I'm sorry, can you see the whole screen?
I can see the whole screen. I've got, the Windows screen with your ZoomText magnifier reader in the middle, and then a kind of toolbar on the right-hand side.
Do you see a bunch of like a large black square around it? It may just be, okay.
Yes,
well,
I do. Yes.
Okay. Let me try something real quick. I'd like for that to take up the whole screen.
Okay, now it looks more full-sized.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to, well, let me let's see here. We'll talk about this first. Then we'll try to toggle that back on. So when you plug into an external monitor, the first thing, there's a couple things you might run into before you even get to your presentation. You plug it in and the projector's on, your laptop's on. You plug in the cord going to the projector, but you don't see your picture on the screen, on the projector. You can see it on your laptop, but you don't have it on the actual projector where the audience can see it. There's a keystroke, Windows P, as in project. We'll bring up this window. And you'll want to set it to either duplicate or extend. Those are the two. Usually you're going to set it to extend. That means it's going to be the second monitor to your laptop. So you plug in the cord, go into the projector. Windows P will bring up this menu where you can set it to extend. A lot of times this happens automatically. I just wanted to point it out that if you do have an issue, there is this Windows P menu here. So if extend is selected, Now I'm going to try to toggle this multi-screen back on. If it does that to us again, we'll just continue. All right, this looks more like it. Yeah, okay. So once we have, we're plugged into the second monitor, we need to, the other thing that may happen is your primary monitor, which is your laptop monitor, it may be on the projector screen. It may be swapped and you don't want it to do that. I just wanted to point out, you can right click anywhere on the desktop and go to display settings. Oops. Display settings. And you'll see your monitors here. And the way you're going to configure that is you're going to click the monitor that you want to be your primary monitor. You're going to select it. And then you're going to scroll down and say, make this my main display. So we're going to use that if for some reason Windows has put your screen on the projector screen and you don't want it to be that. You want it to be on your laptop at the podium. So that's where you do that. Again, that was right clicking on the desktop and just selecting display settings. Now, once we've done that, we have multiple monitors. ZoomText is going to recognize that. And now under our multiple monitors is where we can select the type of monitor or the type of multiple monitor setting we want to use. So before we talk about presenter view, I want to chat a little bit about this, about what these mean. You'll see that now that we have two monitors, the one monitor option is grayed out. That's where we would find like the different magnification types, like full, line. Most of the time we're going to have it on full anyway, but now that we have multiple monitors, that's grayed out. So under multiple monitors, we have span, clone, zoom with 1x, multiview global, or multiview local, and multiview global. We're going to talk about what all those mean. Multiview local is the default, but to begin with span, what span does is it's for folks who want to use two monitors to create one large magnified view. So if I select this, it's going to stretch this doesn't come across on Zoom very well, but if you can imagine, I have two monitors right next to each other. And when I select span, it takes that image from one monitor and stretches it across both. So basically it's like I have one big monitor now. I can scroll to the right and I'll get to the second screen. As you can see, like a little bit of a blue there, you should be able to see part of the second screen. Span is going to be used, yeah, when folks want to just have a larger kind of footprint across two screens. One important thing is if you're going to use this as a user, you want to have the same size monitor. If you have one monitor that's 19-inch, another one that's 21-inch, it's going to look kind of weird. Clone is exactly what it sounds like. It's just going to put the exact same thing on both screens. They're both going to be magnified. They're both going to show the same kind of enhancements. If I turn color on, it's going to be on both screens. It's going to be completely the same. This is a good setting to use if you're doing a presentation on like where you do want to say you're doing a presentation on ZoomText and you want to share the exact view that you have with the audience. You could set this to clone and they're going to see that same thing on the presentation view on the projector. You could do all your color settings. They're going to see the exact same thing. So this is good for a demo of ZoomText, or where, yeah, you just want the exact same thing on the other screen. If we go to the next setting, oh, sorry, I'm under the window. I'm on the magnifier tab under the window options, multiple monitor. So zoom with 1x. So zoom with 1x, what this does, it looks the same on what you're seeing on your screen, but on the second monitor, which you can't see on mine, what this does is on the second monitor, all the magnification is 1x. So if I increase magnification on the primary display, like I'm doing, is zooming in, on the second monitor, nothing's happening. The magnification level stays exactly the same. This is good if the user wants, if you're just using it for yourself, if the user wants to have one monitor that's always kind of like a bird's eye view, they can get a, kind of orient themselves where they're on the screen. And then one screen is magnified. I can still use both screens. If I scroll over to the right, it'll move into that second screen. Like if I bring Chrome up here, I can drag this over to the second screen. So my magnified view, I can see both screens. I can go between the screens, but on that second monitor, it's always at 1x. So this is a good one to use if a ZoomText user is working with someone who doesn't need ZoomText. If they want to look at the same things, that they're working on a group project, they can use this view. One of the screens is 1x, the other one's magnified. The next one is really the one we want to use for PowerPoint. Multiview Local. What that's going to do, it's going to give two independent. You're going to have two independent screens. I can have one screen at 1x. The other screen can be magnified. What we're going to do in this case is for the second monitor, we would go all the way down to 1x, and then we would configure a setting, which we'll get to in a minute, that will disable enhancements. So basically on my computer that I'm doing the presenter view from, I can have color enhancements on, pointer enhancements on, but that other monitor is going to be completely no enhancements. It's going to be at 1x. It won't affect anything we're doing on that screen. The last one, real quick, is Multiview Global. And Multiview Global is going to have separate magnified views on each monitor, but you can basically, the difference is you can scroll between the two views. With Multiview Global, you can't. It won't snap onto the second screen. Basically, Multiview Global is if you just want to really look at one screen, and you can have both of them on that one window. So you're only looking at one screen. So let's go through the settings real quick. So under magnifier window settings, we have the window type, which is the same thing we were just toggling or selecting from. If I go to multiple monitor options, there's a few things in here I want to take a look at. You probably heard a pop sound there when I switch screens. That's a sound that it's a sound cue when the pointer touches and crosses the border of the second screen. If you don't want that, you can uncheck that. You can also see that there's a little line here on the edge of the screen. That's to let the user know the border is right there. You can uncheck that if you don't want it. And then you can keep the pointer from crossing the border. There's a delay. It makes the pointer kind of hang for a second before it goes onto the second screen. Some users don't like that, so you can uncheck that if you don't want it. If you want both views to use the same magnification all the time, you're going to use this setting. I'd recommend not doing that in a presentation. And then finally, this is important. You want to set show screen enhancements to the main the main display only. This way, your PowerPoint, when you're doing your presentation, you're only going to see your magnification enhancements. The audience is not. So finally, real quick, we need to get into looking at the presenter view of PowerPoint. One thing that if someone hasn't used two monitors very often, when they do plug in two monitors, I'm here in a PowerPoint. I'm going to go to the slideshow tab. Under the monitors section, use presenter view is checked by default. Now you may not see this, you may not know what this is if you only use a single monitor. But then when you plug in a second monitor and you start a slideshow, you may be presented with this presenter view, which you're not familiar with. So I'm going to start a slideshow. And I'm going to zoom out. And this is the presenter screen. So the presentation is started on the second monitor is where you only see the current slide. Presenter view looks like this. It's where we have the current slide that's being shown, a preview of the next slide. There's some different features down here like pen and laser pointer tools. you can mess around with. You can advance the slide with these left and right arrow keys, and then you have the notes section here. So I'm going to go forward. So here's a slide that has notes. This is where you can see your notes. So if you haven't used the presenter view before and you plug into an external display, start your presentation, and this pops up, it can be a little jarring because you're used to just seeing the primary slide. You also have a timer up here and a couple commands in the top left, but the main areas, you got your primary slide preview, and the next slide preview, I should say, and then your notes, like your script. And so just to clarify the setting we want to use, we want to have, so if we want to have magnification and enhancements, such as, color enhancements or, pointer enhancements, magnification level on our primary screen, but we don't want anything on the second screen, we want to use, I'd recommend using Multiview Local. That's going to make those two screens independent of each other. You can still magnify either one, but you're going to use Multiview Local. You're going to go over to the second screen, zoom it all the way to 1x. You can also press caps lock enter to do that. And then under window settings, multiple monitor options, you're going to say show the screen enhancements on main display only. Those are the settings you're going to want to use. And that's summarized in a slide here for future reference. All right. We got any questions, or actually we got a poll question, I think.
We do. Let me, I'm going to share my screen.
And this is a great time to throw in some more questions if you have those. But this next poll question is a true false question. So the question is, when presenting with an external or dual monitors, it's possible for the presenter screen to be magnified while the other screen is not. Dual monitors, you're presenting, it's possible for your screen to be magnified while the other screen is not. True or false?
And as Paul said, feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat. while you were presenting, Ben, we did have a question come in about where ZoomText is on the computer. So I've included some links on where you can purchase ZoomText, but just wanted to clarify with our audience that ZoomText is a software purchase. It's not native to your computer.
Right,
So
correct.
Ben, do you have anything to share about that? And I see a hand in the being raised. If you could please put your question in the chat, we would very much appreciate it.
No, that's right. Just like you said, it's not built into Windows. You can purchase it, and then once you do purchase it and install it, there'll be a little ZoomText icon on your desktop where you can run it.
Great. So I've dropped a link where you can purchase a license for JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion, or if you
Right.
want a student version of Zoom, we've got that in the chat as well.
What was that noise?
Hey, kicking that bowl.
Hey, Paul, you're not.
All right. Well,
Alright.
we've had a pretty good response on our poll, so I'm going to review it where we are so far. True or false, when presenting with an external or dual monitor, it's possible for the presenter screen to be magnified while the other screen isn't. 85% said true, 15% said false. Ben, what was the correct response?
It is true. You can do that. You can have a magnified screen as a presenter, in the presentation screen that the audience is seeing can be set to not have any magnification or enhancements at all.
Great. Well, thanks for taking that poll. And remember to keep placing those questions in the chat. So Ben, would you like me to continue screen sharing or?
No, I'm going to do one more screen share.
All right.
All right. Okay, so in this last screen share, we want to take a look at, oops, let me get back over to my window here. So using speech, ZoomText reader features with PowerPoint. I've had a couple questions about this before. So there's a couple areas, a couple items I want to point out where we can use, where speech comes in handy if you're using ZoomText. Let's go to say, okay. So I'm going to turn speech on using Alt Caps Enter.
Voice enabled. Title text box custom mouse echo disabled.
Okay, so if I'm in edit mode, if I'm on a slide, I want to do some editing.
Content placeholder custom.
If I'm editing the slide or some text in the slide, I can simply just arrow around.
Bullet presenter view shows you the current slide, a preview of the next slide, and your speaker notes.
So I'm just using up, down arrow. I can use control left, right arrow.
Notes. Bullet presenter under the slide.
So we need to be in edit mode to do that though. If I'm not in that and I just
Slide 7 zoomed. Slide 6
if I down arrow through that, it's just going to go to the next slide.
Slide 7 ZoomText multiple monitor options custom control.
So if we want to read, say we want to, we want to use the speech feedback to kind of double check our work. We need to click in that placeholder where we have the blinking cursor.
Cursor enhancements enabled. B.
And then I just turned that on so we could see where that cursor was a little easier. Once we're in edit mode, we can use speech.
Available under.
And again, you can use, there's some built-in ZoomText speech reader commands, but you can simply use your up, down arrow, control left, right arrow.
Set bullet multiview local.
To read that. Another question I've got before was, how do I read my speaker's notes when I'm in presentation? So let's say
window PowerPoint slide.
Say we want to read, we're using presenter view and I want to use ZoomText to read this, read what's in this this window here. One other thing to point out down here, there's an increase font size. You can do that with your, caps lock up arrow to actually zoom in the whole screen, but you can click this little increase text size button as well. If we want to use ZoomText to read this, we can use mouse echo. I'm going to press Alt Caps M.
Mouse echo set to instant mode. Multiview Global.
And I may want to put that on hover mode instead of instant because instant's really
Mouse
responsive.
echo set to hover mode.
Hover just means I have to stay on the text a little bit longer until ZoomText reads it. So I could just put my pointer on the line.
Options include span, clone,
And I can just
zoom with 1x.
go down. And so we can use mouse echo to read those notes. Also,
Window zoom.
if I'm in edit mode, if I'm editing the slide, and I go down to the notes window here
Options include
where I type my notes,
span,
I can arrow through that as well. And that's not mouse echo. That's just
Clone.
reader reading the
zoom with
line.
1x. Multiview Local.
So
Status bar.
yeah,
Slide 7.
mouse echo can be used to read our notes in either of those views. And then if we want to read text, we'll just click in the box
Content.
and then arrow through the
Bullet when
box to read text. If you need, if you would like a lot more speech feedback, like if you want it to read when you're in, say you review a whole lot of PowerPoints. If you want,
Window PowerPoint.
say you want to be able to read the, let me swap.
Menu. Swap presenter view and slideshow. Voice disabled.
Say you want to be able to just down arrow and read through these slides. Fusion would do that. ZoomText won't do that, but Fusion will because it's just, it's more robust. It's got the full screen reader, JAWS as part of that package. So if we had Fusion on right here, I could just down arrow and it would read me, objectives, bullet, learn something, some helpful ZoomText keyboard commands to use. So Fusion, if you really want a lot more speech feedback in PowerPoints, Fusion is going to be a good option for you. And I think that's all I wanted to show on that, Betsy Ann. So I don't need the screen anymore.
All right. Let me get back to our last poll question then.
Hey, and we have another true false poll question for you. True or false, mouse echo can be used to read slide notes on the presenter view screen. Mouse echo can be used to read slide notes on the presenter screen. True or false?
All right, and as those poll responses are coming in, I'm checking out our chat. No new questions. We're about ready to wrap up our webinar. So if you did have any questions you wanted to ask about ZoomText and PowerPoint, this is your opportunity to get those questions in. All right, with about 60% of our audience having participated, true or false, mouse echo can be used to read slide notes on the presenter view screen. 86% said true, 14% said false. Ben, what was the correct response?
It's true.
Excellent. All right, Paul, if you want to take us away on our last few slides.
All right, we have our last three slides. So, we never know how much everybody knows about ZoomText coming in. We think most folks may know about it or have it or have thought about getting it, but it's not always the case. So if you want to learn more about ZoomText, Freedom Scientific has lots of resources available on their training site. And we're going to put the link in there for you. freedomscientific.com/training/ZoomText. And if you leave the -ZoomText off, you'll get to the whole list of training stuff, which is going to be JAWS. It's going to be information on Braille displays, all sorts of other things that you can get to from that slide as well. So if you just want to see what all they have, you can just go to freedomscientific.com/training. If you want to go specifically to ZoomText, you can either click the link for ZoomText on that page or just add the extension when you pull up the website for the first time. Lots of resources there, just a really robust training site. Over the last few years, they've built it up tremendously, and there are all kinds of trainings there, accessed webinars and tidbits and videos and YouTube channel and all sorts of things you can get into there and learn quite a bit. Let's think about our discoveries from today's webinar. Learning certain keystrokes will definitely help you more quickly and more easily adjust all your settings while you're presenting a PowerPoint, whether that is magnification or whatever that is, that those things are going to be very helpful for you. ZoomText's multiple monitor feature provides a variety of solutions so a presenter can use a magnified screen. And while editing a slide, ZoomText speech can be used to help review your content. If you need even more speech than what ZoomText gives you, then you'll want to consider Fusion, which moves us nicely into our final slide of the day. We have different licenses available from APH. If you're looking for a ZoomText student annual license, you can get one of those for $89 from the link provided. If you want a JAWS annual license, you can get that for $99. And we do still have the Freedom Scientific Software Suite available for $300, which gives you both. They're not annual licenses. It's a different product. However, if you want more information on that, customer service can help you do that. That is the way to get Fusion. In that license, you would have both ZoomText and JAWS together. Some of the terms are different as far as how it works and some of the different things like that. So customer service from APH is the best way to get the information on that or to go to the website.